Hello, and welcome to our series, Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. I'm Russell Robinson, Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund USA. We build in the land of Israel through your philanthropic investments. Our water solutions, groundbreaking research and development, and reclaiming the desert are shared the world over. In the United States, we are the leader in Zionist engagement, reaching over 20,000 students a year. Today, Israel serves as a light unto nations. Today, Israel makes the world a better place. As I travel the world and meet so many people of all ages, I share their frustration. The definition of Zionism, our people's movement for self-determination, has been hijacked by those who are anti the Jewish people and who have no understanding of history or facts. Well, no more. The time has come to be the voice of what Zionism really is. Zionism comes in all colors, shapes, and sizes. It's inclusive, diverse, respectful. Zionism builds bridges. It's about freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. It's a beautiful movement that has changed the course of the Jewish people. Zionism gives all of us strength. Zionism supports Israel, a country where synagogues, mosques, churches all share the same skyline. A country where Christians, Jews, and Muslims live as neighbors and sit around the table. And while they have different views, they all have a seat within the tent of Abraham. Jewish National Fund USA is hosting a series of real stories, human interactions, short films, interview, panel discussions, and more. We're exposing the beautiful and diverse facets and facts of Zionism. Join me on this journey, together with Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. This is Zionism.
Imagine a conversation about Israel, global Jewry, the leaders of today, of tomorrow, with people from Dimona, Denver, Kiryat Shimona, and Oklahoma. For the first time in Jewish history, Jewish National Fund is creating a conversation that will build bridges across generations, denominations, politics, and oceans, direct from Beersheba in the footsteps of Abraham. A state-of-the-art village that will inspire Jewish leaders of all ages and backgrounds from all across the globe. A campus surrounded by sports fields, a 1,300-acre park, a 28-acre lake, an amphitheater, a 26-screen cinematheque, and Israel's largest mall. Beersheba, a rich mosaic of people. Home to Jewish National Fund's Beersheba River Park, JNF's Louder Employment Center, Ben-Gurion University, and high-tech companies. An ideal location to make Jewish National Fund's vision come true. The campus will include an internship, innovation, and technology center, the first Zionist adult education center in the world, the southern campus of our semester abroad high school in Israel, top quality conference center facilities, study areas, a food court, restaurants, a synagogue, beautifully landscaped outdoor space, classrooms, and comfortable, modern overnight accommodations for short and long-term stays. Join Jewish National Fund as we host the greatest conversation the global Jewish community ever had. Join us as we embark on a journey to build the first campus of its kind, a campus that says, "We believe in the future of global Jewry." In 1901, there was Theodore Herzl. In 1948, there was David Ben-Gurion. Today, there is you.
With me today is award-winning American presidential historian, leading Zionist activist, and best-selling author, Gil Troy. Welcome, Gil, to our show. I want to thank you very much for giving us the time. because you're such an unbelievable special person that educates and really excites people about Zionism. Now, your life has been immersed in this Zionist movement. Tell us, what's your pathway? I mean, Canada, Israel, how did you get to become the person that people go to when they want to learn about Zionism?
Kind of you to say. And first of all, I have to say, Russell, it's a mutual admiration society. You're such a hero. You've done so many amazing things. And you've taken this brand, JNF, which goes back, of course, to Theodor Herzl, and you've modernized it and you've brought it into the 21st century and the 22nd century. So really hats off to you. I loved fitting in. I loved building my career as an American historian. I loved being normal. I loved the great opportunity that America has given us to be normal, to fit in, to thrive. But I also had, also from my parents, that tremendous sense of heritage, that tremendous sense of peoplehood, that tremendous sense of commitment to the Jewish people. And whereas I originally built my career very much as kind of a Jew at home and an American historian named Gil Troy, very normal on the street, about 20 years ago, when we think it only started recently, but when there was a spike in anti-Semitism, a spike in Jew hatred. Why? Because Israel, which had tried so hard during the 1990s to find peace with the Palestinians, was being attacked by terrorism, the most awful kind of terrorism, the blowing up of buses, the murdering of kids in cafes, of families in cafes. And everyone's blaming Israel, not Yasser Arafat. Everybody's blaming the Israelis, not the Palestinians. Everybody's blaming the Jews. And I was traumatized. And I wrote an essay called Why I'm a Zionist. And it really was my coming out of the closet moment. It was my way of going public and saying how proud I am to be a part of this Jewish conversation, be a part of this Jewish people. And I expected to be attacked. What I didn't expect was how many people said, wow, thank you. You're taking this word Zionism and making it relevant. And that became my next mission.
But Gil, why? Why did you take that step? I mean, listen, things happen. And you walk by, you don't have to go to the police line, to see what is the accident all about. You can walk by, you don't have to go to the game. Why did you stand up, write an essay, put your kind of life path in a different path? What was inside of you that said, this is what I have to do?
Well, it's the New Yorker in me and the Jew in me. The New Yorker, the proud American, said, it's wrong for the Jewish people to be beaten up like that. I grew up in a world where you didn't allow bullies to run the table, where you didn't allow bullies to beat you up and then spin the story to their advantage. So part of it was sort of the outraged Queens boy in me, the tough New Yorker, but also the American who has a strong sense of decency, a strong sense of fairness. But of course, it also has to do with the fact that I'm a Jew and that we are one people. We know that wherever we are, we're never alone. And I couldn't just build my career more and more as an American historian without also leveraging some of that to speak about the Jewish people, to speak about Israel, and to say, I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Jew in the 21st century. I'm proud to be a Zionist. And I'm going to use that word, and I'm going to use it not to bash Palestinians, but to do what you do. Celebrate Jewish history, celebrate Jewish values, celebrate Jewish heritage, celebrate Jewish meaning, celebrate Jewish identity, and then actually turn to the rest of the world and say, look, this is a model of how to be both liberal and someone who's proud of your heritage. Be a nationalist and a liberal, be a universalist and a particularist. We've got a wonderful balance going on. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to retreat from that. And if you attack me, I'm going to defend it.
Years ago, you're facing a lot of noise out there, as we are today. You're an American historian, but you're not, in all respect, you're not on the Tonight Show every night, but you put yourself out there, you put together an essay, you print it. Did you expect the kind of reaction that you got?
I expected the negative. I didn't expect the positive. I remember coming home that night and saying to my wife, from now on, we had 3 young kids in the home, and a 4th eventually came. I said, from now on, if a package comes into our house and we don't know where it comes from, we don't open it. I ultimately took my name off the house. I didn't mind if people attacked me in email. I didn't mind if people attacked me in the media. But that's what was going on, especially in Montreal in 2001, in April 2001. What I didn't expect was how many emails and this thing we used to have called letters by mail from people saying, wow, somebody's speaking up for us. And whereas I didn't get on the Tonight Show, I didn't make the New York Times, I started building the Jewish circuit. And my book, I turned this 800-word essay, it got such an intense reaction from the Jewish world that I turned it into a book. I went to the New York publishers because I'd already published 2 books on American history. And they said, this will take 1.5 years. I said, I can't wait that long. And so I found a local Hebrew-based publisher here in Montreal. We printed it as kind of a self-publishing thing, and we sold over 30,000 copies. It became my first major big seller. Why? Because people, Jews, but there were also some non-Jews, but mostly Jews, were looking for inspiration. We're looking for exactly what you do, which is giving a framework for Zionism, which isn't defensive, isn't apologetic, isn't anti-Palestinian, but is pro-us. And by being pro-us is also pro-humanity.
I want to ask you this, Gil, because your essay came out at the same time an essay was written by the current foreign minister of Israel. He wasn't the foreign minister there. And concurrently, not knowing each other, as I understand, you both put an essay out, What is Zionism? What is the difference between your Zionism and Yair Lapid's Zionism?
So it was really quite fascinating. I write this essay, Why I'm a Zionist. I'm a Zionist because I'm a Jew, and the Jews are both a nation and a religion. I am a Zionist because I'm part of this 3,500-year-old conversation about meaning, about values, about who I can be, who we were and who we can be, and how we can make the world a better place. And I go on, I am a Zionist, I am a Zionist, I am a Zionist. And this media personality at the time, a guy by the name of Yair Lapid, does the same thing in Hebrew, and then it's translated in English. And I like to teach the 2 texts. And usually when you teach a text, most academics will show how their text is better. I actually like his better on a certain level, because what he does as an Israeli is mine starts in the head and gets to the heart. His starts in the fingertips. He talks about the first time I saw my son wearing an army uniform, I cried. He said, I use Hebrew, the language of the Bible and the language of prayer, to also curse. He is so much more rooted in a textured kind of Zionism, in a day-to-day kind of Israeli life. We end up in the same place, which is we were both trying to take back this term Zionism, which has been beaten up, which has been distorted, which has been perverted. But he started from his, what do we now call it, his lived experience. And I started from my more wonky intellectual experience, and we got to the same place.
So you come intellectually, he comes from an emotional and Israeli point of view. So there's different facets of Zionism. And I know you've talked about it before, and I think it's important for our audience to hear about it. An American Jew, a Brazilian Jew, a non-Jew, other people. What are the different levels or identities of Zionism?
So for a long time, we talked about the Zionist idea. And in 1958, this great academic, Arthur Hertzberg, came out with a book called The Zionist Idea with 34 texts explaining this amazing revolution, which started just as a bunch of people jabbering, and by 1948 had created a state. The Zionist idea is A, we are a people, not just a religion. B, we have rights to a particular homeland, the land of Israel, which doesn't preclude others from having rights, because I grew up out just in the shadow of Manhattan, where Native Americans also have ties, but it doesn't negate America. And 3, a people with ties to a particular homeland have the rights to establish a state on that land, the Zionist idea. Decades later, I was given the opportunity to update that book, and I called it the Zionist Ideas. Why? Because exactly as you're saying in your question, today, it's not just about political Zionism. We need a state. But even back then, there was robust conversation about labor Zionism and religious Zionism and all kinds of different Zionisms. And today, it's even more so. And one of the things I tried to add to the conversation was not just religious Zionism, not just labor Zionism, not just the cultural Zionism of Chad-Am, not just the political Zionism of Theodor Herzl, but also talk about identity Zionism. And identity Zionism is about Who am I? This is a very confusing world we live in. This is a very identity demolishing world we live in. This can be a very lonely world we live in. Identity Zionism says we're not better than anybody else, but we're lucky. We're lucky to be a part of a conversation for 3,500 years about who we are and who we can be. And we're even more lucky because we're part of a community. And that community, that network, that family boosts us up. That community, that network, that family gives us a conversation. Sometimes it drives us crazy, but it also connects us in a world that's constantly disconnecting us, or at least pushing our connections from human and real to virtual and technological.
It's so important, and I really want to go back to it over and over, because our young people today, young, old, doesn't matter, who are not intellectually aware of what Zionism is. I mean, we could define it, you could define it better than anybody and talk about ancestral soil, you could talk about historic, but when you talk about the identity, who am I? Why am I a Zionist? How do I express that? What's some of your recommendations to people that say, I want to be a Zionist, but I don't want to read the entire, chapter and verse, but that identity Zionism that you talk about and defining it for people, and I thought it was very interesting when you use labor Zionists and religious Zionists. If you want to look at two different groups of people who, for sure, have a different viewpoint on the Jewish world, but the same viewpoint on Zionism. How do you say to some young person, old person out there, Troy, how do they take that identity Zionism? Give us some words about helping them come to some clarity of conversation.
There are two ways into the conversation. The easiest way is when they're in Israel, right? And that's been the power of so many of the JNF trips that you guys run for young and old, the power of Birthright, the power of Masa, by bringing people just into Israel and then helping them label those feelings they're having, the feelings of, wow, this is layered. We don't just talk about in decades as we do in American history, but we're talking about not just in centuries, we're talking about in millennia. And I'm a part of this. This is my story. That sense of ownership, that sense of connectedness, that sense of family, that sense of people being a part of something. And it doesn't matter if you have a kippah on your head or you don't. It doesn't matter if you're a right winger or a left winger. It doesn't matter if you approach it more from a religious perspective or from a kibbutz perspective, but you're a part of something big and you're part of the greatest Jewish adventure of the 20th and 21st century, which is the state of Israel. So then what you do is you just say, well, those feelings have a label. That label is Zionism, sense of peoplehood, sense of pride, sense of connectedness, sense of family. It's much harder, of course, and about 50% of American Jews have visited Israel and 50% haven't, which is work for us, to sit in New York, to sit in Mexico City, to sit in Montreal, both for American Jews and non-Americans, and say, what is this thing? And you say, well, wait a minute, are you Jewish? And they go, yeah. You say, well, do you believe in God? Most don't. Do you have a kippah on your head if you're a male? Most don't. Do you keep kosher? Most don't. Then what kind of a Jew are you? I'm a proud Jew. Why? Because you're a part of a people. Because we're this mix. I call it the Oreo cookie. Just like the Oreo cookie has the cookie part and the cream part, and that's what makes it the most popular cookie in the world. It says it on the internet, and everything on the internet is true. Judaism is an Oreo cookie. It's a mix of nation and religion. It's not just about belief, but it's also about belonging. Wow, they say, huh? I never really understood that. I never understood why. I don't think of myself as an ex-Jew. I don't think of and often they say they don't think of themselves as a good Jew. I say there's no such thing. The Lubavitch Rebbe said there's no such thing as a bad Jew. You're a Jew. Why you're a Jew? Because you're a part of it. You either converted into it or you were born into it. Why? Because it's a nation. You're a people. And as a people, we have this religious dimension, we have this ethical dimension, we also have this national dimension. And they go, wow. And so even for people who've never been to Israel, I can start with the Zionist conversation about who we are. And then you can also get to an analysis of what are we missing in the modern world? So many of us, so many of my young people, so many of my college students whom I love feel lonely, feel lost, feel alienated. And again, I always say, I'm not saying Zionism or Jewish peoplehood is the best thing, but you don't have to feel lost because you're a part of this family. You don't have to feel alone because we've got all these ideas. You don't have to feel alienated because you're a part of this conversation. And again, you see it in their eyes. Wow, wait a minute. I saw this old white male coming to me to talk about Zionism. You're not giving me the guilt trip. You're not giving me the Israel of the hunchback and the furrowed brow. If you don't save the Jewish people and defend Israel every single time it's attacked, then Israel's going to collapse. Not true. I want to have a conversation. I want to start with, who are you? I want to start with, what makes you feel good? What are you looking for? And this is a structure. This is a framework that works. And again, that's so much of what you've been doing too. And I call that identity Zionism. It starts with the biggest question in the Western world. The biggest question in the Western world, especially for our young people, isn't how much money I'm going to make. It's not what's my job. It's who am I going to be? And how am I going to find some GPS that works for me? Some sense of values, and more important, some community. Because it's not on Facebook. Those are fake friends. I need real friends. I need people, and we saw it during COVID. What did we miss? We missed the touch. We missed the annoyance sometimes. We missed the connectedness. And Judaism is a built-in framework for connectedness and for talking about meaning.
There's no better gift to give or receive than one that can connect you with nature and your homeland. JNF has made it super easy for you to order your tree certificate online. Just go to jnf.org/trees, pick which special occasion it's for, whether a birth, bar mitzvah. Just order your tree online and let's get planting. Every tree counts. As a memorial to a loved one, as a tribute for a special occasion, as a link to your heritage, as a link to the land of Israel, to help the environment and reduce your carbon footprint. Every tree counts.
Is Zionism failing? Or is American leadership or leadership of organized Jewish world failing?
I often say that if we had really done the best job possible in putting the conversation about Zionism where it should be, in speaking to young people about what Zionism really is to me, about identity Zionism, about the pride that you express so often about being Jewish and about being Zionist, and that didn't work, then I'd say, okay, the Zionism part isn't working. But because we haven't done that, and because, frankly, to be controversial, I sometimes say that much Israel education I see in America, especially, is a form of child abuse. And it's about the guilt trip, and it's about oversimplifications, and it's a fear of nuance, and it's a fear of complexity, and it's a fear of having all these open doors and these messy approaches and these crossed wires. I love crossed wires. I love, as Natan Sharansky teaches me, the great refusenik, identity and freedom, liberalism and nationalism, universalism, particularism. I love being a juggler or a wire crosser. And too many of my friends on the far right and on the far left, and too many leaders of the establishment are afraid of that conversation. So what do we need? We need what I call a jujitsu, J-E-W. Turn the negative into a positive. Turn this vast wasteland that's called often the Zionist conversation in America into something positive. And more important, to go to the opening part of your question, what kind of a fool allows the enemy to define him or her? Who did I learn this from? I learned this from my African-American friends. I learned this from my LGBTQ friends. I learned this from my feminist friends. Take back the night. Take the words that people use to impose on us. They've turned Zionism into a dirty word. I'm going to turn it into a blessing and into a word of honor. I'm not going to allow the enemy to define me. We're going to define ourselves. And I'm really tired of people always saying, what's wrong with us? So many people hate us. And Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the great liberal Democratic senator from New York, said, what's going on here? Why are we so angry at the accused? I'm angry at the accuser. And I think that's very relevant for what's going on right now. Let's call out the accusers and stop feeling guilty that we're the accused. We're the victims here, but we're not going to be victims. We're victims if we let them define us. We're winners when indeed we tell the greatest story. What's the greatest story in the 21st century is the story of a people lost, broken, homeless, humiliated, who turned it around, who now have created a model democracy. Is it perfect? No democracy is. A model democracy in the Middle East of all places, startup nation, vaccination nation, but more important, the Jewish democratic nation.
So the word authentic, big word in especially our millennial world. Everything has to be authentic. Zionism is authentic?
You can't get any more real than Zionism. Look, when you live, especially the Israeli experience, and go back to our friend Yair Lapid, it's in his fingertips, right? What's the magic for American Jews, for American Jewish youth, when they come to Israel and they see, oh, Judaism isn't just this thing I put up on my wall or in my doorpost. Judaism isn't just this huge cathedral called the synagogue, which I only fill up 3 times a year. And what's going on, the mumbo jumbo there is so alienating. It takes me a whole year to screw up the courage to go back. Judaism is this multidimensional thing. Judaism is fun. Judaism has a smile on its face. Judaism has a kick in the dance step. Judaism has a song in its heart. Judaism is also, let's be honest, sometimes dangerous. But that danger is about also courage. It's about overcoming danger. It's about dilemmas. It's multidimensional. We go from this very bland, sterile, flat kind of Judaism to a living, breathing organism that pulls us in and makes me feel a part of something. And that's the greatest feeling on earth, being a part of something bigger than yourself, going beyond your own little concerns. Did I get a good grade? Did I make enough money this week? What's my job? And these are all important things. But to put all that in the context of, wow, I'm a meaning seeker. And by the way, the older people often think the millennials only care about money. I know millennials, I know young students today, they care about meaning. They care about social justice. They care about doing good. I don't have to tell you this. You know this and you speak to them about this. And we have a framework for doing all that. Is it the best? Is it the only? No. But it's mine and it's theirs and it's ours. And it's, been going for 3,500, 3,800 years and doing pretty well.
I travel all over. I meet people all the time. Last night I had another event. And I, like you, sometimes feel that I'm that lone voice out there talking about the win. You've been in this fight a long time. Really not a fight, it's the greatest experience that we've been allowed to be participating in. You've been in the middle of that forest, you've been there, you've been writing, you've been talking, you have put your career, you have done those things, you stood up, you wrote that essay, you made Aliyah. Do you think we're winning? Do you think we're losing? Do you think that there's issues? And if you're recommending, and I know there's not one formula that's going to cure anything, but what's a couple of aspirins for us?
So first of all, I think you're right. The key aspirin is shifting the conversation. Think about it. With so many enemies, with so much hostility, with so many lures also, right? It's so easy not to be Jewish. It's so easy to become Giltroy and not Gilad Troyansky. It's so easy to just kind of join the vast shopping center called North America. With all that, we're still here. Not only are we still here, but we're alive and we're thriving and we're yelling and screaming at each other and we're looking out for one another and we're fighting against our enemies and we're celebrating. So, in this world, the sheer act of survival, especially after the Holocaust, especially after so much anti-Semitism, is a miracle. But this goes back to the jujitsu idea. God forbid that we build an identity that's only anti-Zionist or only anti-Semitic or is only built on don't let Hitler win. I want to transcend that. I want to go back to the original vision of Theodor Herzl, who wasn't just a traumatized Jew. He was a Jew who found himself by standing up for himself. And that was the whole notion of the JNF, that we're going to bring people in from all corners of the world. And everybody at the time when a lot of Jews didn't have money are going to take that little penny, that little nickel, and just put it in that box and be a part of something bigger than themselves. And everybody had, I know growing up, we all had the little, blue box and we all knew what JNF was, what it was all about. You can be a part of something bigger than yourself. So what are aspirins? Aspirins are, first of all, block out the noise. When people on college campus say, oh, we didn't have time for Shabbat dinner, Sabbath dinner, or we didn't have time to talk about the Zionist salons, you want to have conversations about Zionist texts because we had to fight, we had to go to demonstrate. I said, no. When our enemies are surrounding us, and we do have enemies, it's more important than ever to strengthen our core. I call this Pilates Judaism, Pilates Zionism. We strengthen the core. We read the books. We talk to one another. We celebrate our holidays. We celebrate our victories. We celebrate our values. And then, if necessary, we also roll up our sleeves and fight. But you know what? We also spend way too much time on their turf. We spend way too much time defending Israel and not celebrating Israel. We spend way too much time explaining Zionism to those who hate us, who will never give us the time of day. And not enough talking to our own people, our own young people and our old people about the power, the beauty of identity Zionism and of this chain of beautiful reactions that goes all the way back to Abraham and Sarah, and Moses and Zipporah, and Devorah the prophetess. And today, still fills my life with meaning, still fills my with values, and still allows me to sit down with somebody and just have a conversation, two strangers, about all these things that our parents had in common, our grandparents had in common, we have in common. And if we just work a little hard, our grandkids and our great-grandkids will also have in common. That's really special. It's three-dimensional living in a world that's often one-dimensional.
So, Gail, we talked about a self-publishing book. There was a young man in his 30s. Most people don't realize that he was in his 30s, and he wrote a book that changed the Jewish world. And this is your last question. Theodor Herzl has come. You had that moment, an opportunity to say to him, this is the difference that you have made. What would you say to Theodor Herzl?
You gave us a spine, you gave us a heart, you gave us a soul. You came up at a time when people looked at Jews as weak and sniveling, and most Jews looked at themselves as weak and sniveling. And you, frankly, in your early writings, looked at Jews as weak and sniveling. You gave us a spine. You gave us a heart because you saw that by standing up for the Jewish people, by being proud, it wasn't just a matter of being aggressive, but it was about finding all those other emotions, about living 3D, living full time, living in a full bodied, full blooded way. And most important, you gave us a soul. And that soul, that heart, that spine is expressed in the state. That soul, that heart, that spine is expressed in the sense of Jewish peoplehood we have in the United States, in Canada, in Mexico, in South America, in the former Soviet Union. Wow. One person standing up, one person writing a 65-page pamphlet, one person calling together in 1897 a Zionist Congress and saying, you know what? I want everybody to dress in formal wear because by being a little bit stiff, we'll be a little bit more polite. And Jews aren't always so polite. By being a little stiff, we'll also show the world that we can be sophisticated. And this crazy man, this insane hero, changed my life, changed your life, changed Jewish life. And again, this isn't just an internal Jewish conversation. He offered a model, and Israel today offers a model, and Zionism today offers a model of how, in a world that is keep on saying, me, my, more, now, shop, till you drop, saying, no, wait a minute. Find a structure, find a framework, find a community, find a people, find a mission that goes way deeper than last week's most popular YouTube of cats rolling around or babies drooling. Find something important in your life that's rooted, that's anchored, that's about the past, Alt Neuland, Old New Land, but that also, Alt Neuland, looks forward to the future, looks forward to making the world a better place. And that's Theodor Herzl, that's Russell Robinson, that's JNF, that's Identity Zionism. And that's been my pleasure to be a very, very small part. You've been way too generous in your praise of what I'm trying to do and what we're all trying to do. Each one of us makes our own little contribution. And together, we might stand up to reach Herzl's knees. But we're trying and we're doing our best.
Gil Troy, breath in our chest, strength, giving us unbelievable words of wisdom. And with the inspiration to young to old, don't stop, partner. We need you. The conversation will continue. We'll define Zionism for the world. Gil Troy, thank you. You make me strong every day.